Hey everybody, this is Mr. Moppin coming at you with another APUSH video. This time we're taking a look at topic 5.5, which is entitled Sectional Conflict, Regional Differences. So, a little bit of a vague title, but there's a number of things that do go into this topic. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the controversy and challenges that are going to be associated with Antebellum Era Immigration. Most of these immigrants that are going to be coming over are going to be in two different groups, the Irish and the Germans. And we'll first take a look at Irish immigration in the United States during this time period. Now, as you can see here, approximately half of these total immigrants of this pre-Civil War era, nearly 2 million, will be coming from Ireland. So we are seeing a massive influx of Irish immigrants into the United States during the 1830s, 40s, and 50s. Main reason why this is happening? Well, you've got a number of economic challenges going on in Ireland proper. There is a massive potato blight, and by this point in time, and once again, kind of shows you the impact of the Columbian, the Columbian exchange. That the potato, which was originally native to the Western Hemisphere, had by this point in time made its way to Europe and had established itself now, for generations as the staple crop for the Irish. But when a massive, blight affects the potato harvest, the Irish would begin to starve in large numbers. Potatoes were very, very popular because they were easy to grow, they were cheap, and they were hardy. But when those potatoes become unedible or inedible, that's going to create tremendous challenges. Now, also keep in mind that there were some political challenges for those that were in Ireland as well. The Irish had not been independent yet, still under the thumb of Britain, so that doesn't help either. But nonetheless, the idea being is that if they came to America, America is known now as this land of freedom, where there's no religious, official religion for the United States. There's political freedom. There's economic opportunities. This is going to be very, very attractive to, millions of poor Irish that are going to be wanting to come over here. But note, as is commonly the case, when immigrants come over, it's not nearly as rosy as what was imagined. The vast majority of these Irish immigrants are going to be very, very poor and will end up residing in large cities in the northern half of the United States, in particular Boston and New York. These folks are going to be struggling to, just find any work that was possible. So you generally saw the Irish at the bottom of the social ladder in many northern communities, or at least near the bottom, competing with black Americans for the hardest working, lowest paying jobs that were available. And you might be asking, well, why are the Irish going to be near the bottom of the social ladder? Well, it's not just lack of economic means that's going to make the Irish at the bottom of the ladder. There's going to be tremendous anti-Catholic sentiment in this country during this time period. Now, granted, Catholics have been in the United States since day one, but Catholics had never come over in such large numbers as this before. And with America being an overwhelmingly Protestant nation, this was seen as a major problem. And this is still back in a time where Protestants and Catholics really didn't get along very well. Much different than it is today. So there was a sense that you've got these Irish Catholics that are coming over. And remember, America has, more of a cultural connection to England than any other country. And, the English had always looked down on the Irish as, almost by definition an inferior group of people. So a lot of that discrimination culturally and religiously is going to be following here to the United States. And so basically on the socioeconomic ladder, there were no lower white people than the Irish. And that's going to explain why the Irish are going to be in such competition with black Americans for jobs. And unfortunately, that's only going to lead to intense rivalries between black Americans and Irish Americans in many of these large cities. Now, that being said, the Irish are going to have a big and growing influence on politics. As the Irish come over in these just overwhelming numbers in places like Boston, New York especially, the Democratic Party is going to be very wise to pick up on this demographic shift and will be able to establish political machines like the infamous Tammany Hall in New York to organize the Irish vote by providing work, providing assistance in terms of kind of getting established in the United States, and basically in exchange for coercing their vote for the Democratic Party. So the Irish are going to be a major part of Democratic Party strength in these major cities for a long, long time, and it's going to fuel a lot of the party machines that are going to be emerging in these big cities. Now, the other major group of immigrants coming over at this time, I had mentioned previously, are going to be the Germans. And when we do talk about the Germans, you're talking about over 1 million coming over as well during this time period. Now, it's a little bit different, the circumstances, than the Irish. The Germans are fleeing active political instability in Central Europe during the Revolution of 1848. Some will be coming over for economic opportunities, but a lot of it is due to political instability. And so America is very attractive. It's seen as politically stable, it's politically open, lots of job opportunities. Now, one of the major differences between the typical German immigrant and the typical Irish immigrant is that typically the German immigrant was more of a middle-class person economically and had more opportunities to kind of pick and choose where they wanted to live. So they weren't kind of bound to staying in these very, very crowded, poor working class neighborhoods like the Irish will be in New York and Boston. They will move all across the country, particularly out to the Midwest. A lot settling in major cities like Milwaukee and our very own Cincinnati. Cincinnati is going to have a major, major, major German population influx during this time period. In fact, some of my ancestors came over during this wave as well, at least my German relatives, German ancestors rather. But anyhow, when you look at Cincinnati during this time period, very common to see bilingual street signs and storefronts in German. You saw the development of neighborhoods, like over the Rhine, in reference to the Rhine River back in Germany. You started to see the creation of dozens upon dozens of breweries in Cincinnati. So it starts to take on a very, very German, style for sure. Now, the Germans are going to be integrated a little bit easier and a little bit more accepted than the Irish due to the fact that the Germans, once again, have more wealth coming over, generally speaking. And there isn't this, general cultural history of anti-German sentiment in England like there is with regards to the Irish. But still, though, there's still going to be a sense that, you could stereotype these immigrants as being, un-American, as, too Catholic, or, stereotypes of being too reliant on alcohol and, providing, a cultural shift that's bad for America. And that really is going to be the root of the growing nativist sentiment that's going to be defining this time period. Nativism is the fear and hatred of immigrants, and we're going to see a major rise in nativism in reaction to this large groundswell of immigration taking place during this time period. And what was it that these nativists feared? Well, unfortunately, it's going to be the same things that we'll see pop up time and again with regards to nativism or xenophobic attitudes towards immigrants. And the main things being that there's a sense that immigrants will be taking away jobs that an American-born person should be entitled to, and or these immigrants are going to change the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture that had defined the United States, with this influx of Catholics coming in, that are non-English culturally, they might not even speak English like the Germans, etc. So there's this growing sense that native-born Americans are being overwhelmed by these foreigners, these folks that aren't really American, that don't really share our values, and would therefore be a threat to our nation. And, as an outgrowth of this nativist sentiment, you're going to see the creation of a group known as the American Party. The American Party was a straight-up nativist political group whose main focus was trying to keep America American. As you can kind of see in this flag here, the American Party, first of all, they called themselves Native Americans, which is kind of interesting because we use the term Native Americans today to talk about, groups that were here before Europeans came over, American Indians as a synonym. But these folks called themselves Native Americans because they believe that they are, they are born in America, therefore they are native to America, therefore they are real Americans, and that they had a responsibility to defend America from the incoming hordes of dangerous immigrants, as you can see here mentioned in this flag. You might be wondering, why are some of these ends backwards? I tried reading up on it. The best that I could find was that it was maybe trying to send a message that these were, working class Americans, real Americans that weren't, fancy politicians that knew perfect grammar. That's the best I could find, but I don't know for a fact. But it is kind of interesting. And no, it's not Russian or anything like that. But anyhow, to be more specific, what was the goal of the American Party? Well, they wanted to make it much harder to become an American citizen. As you can see here, wanting to raise residency requirements to become a citizen from 5 years to 21 years, making it very hard for recent, or nearly impossible for recent immigrants to have any kind of political voice. On top of that, they wanted to make sure that those that were holding public office were native-born white Americans. Now, granted, the Constitution bars any religious test to hold office, but it doesn't say anything about making rules based on, origin of birth and things like that. In fact, in the Constitution it says if you want to be president, you have to be a native or natural-born American. So that's what these guys are basically trying to do. Now, a nickname for this group is the Know Nothing Party, and they get that nickname from their origin being what kind of started out before they became an actual political party, was kind of this, somewhat secret, fraternal group. Not exactly the Masons, but something along those lines. And when asked, about their affiliation with this group, they would just say, "I know nothing," and that's where the nickname came from. But for a time period in the mid-1850s, the Know Nothings will be very popular in parts of America that had tremendous fears of the influence of immigrants in America. And in particular, it's going to be picking up when the Whig Party will be dying out by the early 1850s, and there'll be a bit of a vacuum there to try to fill that void of what Northern Whigs had kind of wanted. And in fact, we'll see the Know Nothings probably have their strongest political voice in the 1856 presidential election, when they will run former President Millard Fillmore for that spot. Now, of course, the Know Nothings don't really come close to winning, but it does show that there's a very real, organized, anti-immigrant feeling that is defining a lot of, especially the northern half of the United States. The southern half doesn't quite have this same issue, mostly because we don't see a whole lot of immigrants in the South, so it's not seen as a much more visceral issue. But note that issues of anti-Catholic sentiments, nativist sentiments, racist sentiments is going to be extended all the way out into the West. There's this sense as more and more white folks are moving into areas that were now being annexed as a result of manifest destiny, be it in the Mexican Cession or the Oregon Territory or whatever. There is a strong sense that those folks that are native to there, be it Latinos that are Catholic or Native Americans, etc., that they are not real Americans, and their culture and their history is not to be respected. So understand that one of the undercurrents going on during this time period, where it seems like the only thing that anyone's talking about is slavery, there's a lot of other things going on as well. So we will leave it there for now. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.